The war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu is reeling in disbelief as Cyprus, once seen as a silent partner, now turns against him and his colonial schemes, the island erupting in fury and defiance as protests sweep through its streets, shaking the Israeli establishment to its core. This isn't just politics, it's a reckoning, a long overdue rejection of the creeping expansionism that has defined Israel's strategy in the region for decades. Reports from across Cyprus describe a wave of outrage so intense that authorities have been forced to limit relations with Israel, freeze weapon transfers, and arrest criminal agents of the occupation caught trying to buy up vast swaths of Cypriot land under the guise of real estate investment. The goal was simple: turn Cyprus into another outpost, another vassal of apartheid Israel, another pawn in a colonial chess game that has run for too long.
General of the left-wing Akel party Stefano has said that Israeli investors are buying up coastal land and are building what he called Zionist schools and synagogues. He claimed that parts of Cyprus are turning into gated ghettos. Now, Stefano also added that Israel does not tolerate criticism and wants to control everything. Israel's ambassador has condemned these statements, calling them plain and simple anti-Semitism. Ambassador Oren Anolik has said that Stefano had crossed a line, targeting a community on the basis of identity.
As I dug into the history between Cyprus and Zionism, I found a dark pattern of manipulation and deceit, a story that leaves a bitter taste every time it resurfaces, because Cyprus was never just an island to Zionists. It was a tool, a stepping stone in their march toward domination, a place to exploit before Palestine became the chosen prize. Before I tell you about the latest revolt against Israeli encroachment through property grabs and covert settlements, understand this: Zionist history in Cyprus has always been one of opportunism, of taking without belonging, of using others as ladders to climb toward power. Like and share this video to help us fight YouTube suppression in the algorithm. Subscribe if you're yet to, because this is the truth they don't want told.
We have decided to sign a 5-year bilateral defense cooperation with this country, and we continue to work hand in hand with the state committing that genocide.
In the late 19th century, figures like Theodor Herzl and the early Zionist ideologues eyed Cyprus not as a home, but as a staging ground. They saw it as a convenient base near Palestine, a launch pad to advance their exclusionary dream, treating the island not as a sovereign land with its own people and history, but as disposable real estate to be bought, used, and discarded. The records of those Zionist congresses make it clear Cyprus was discussed, dissected, and dismissed when the greater conquest of Palestine came into focus. Now, decades later, that history is repeating itself, and Cypriot youth know it. They've seen what Israel did to Palestine, and they're saying never again. Protests have erupted across the island, blocking Israeli ships and torching some in acts of open defiance. A fiery statement against the silent infiltration that's been unfolding under the banner of investment and development. Reports suggest Israel even deployed air defense systems in Cyprus, allegedly to protect its assets, but in truth to prepare for any uprising that could threaten its grip over the Cypriot government. To save face, the authorities moved swiftly. A Cypriot court recently sentenced Israeli businessman Shimon Aykut to 5 years in prison for illegally developing Greek Cypriot property in the Turkish-held north.
And in doing so, supposedly kind of secure the island for themselves. This is what the agenda is here. And this is also why the last 2 years have been reports of Cyprus being given as well Israeli defense systems, which I think were recently confirmed as well. And I had noticed this in the initial stages around pretty much since the early days of 2024, when I found it alarming as to why Cyprus all of a sudden was accumulating or being given Israeli air defense systems. I was concerned as to what exactly is the plan that they're trying to prepare Cyprus for? What is Cyprus going to be defending itself against? Yes, there is an occupation, but the conflict is frozen, so there's a relative calm, there's a status quo. to all of a sudden be escalating air defense systems from Israel inside of Cyprus, it goes to show that there's an agenda here as well. And the agenda that they have for Cyprus is to expel Turkey in order to limit Turkey's influence within the region, because Israel wants to be the dominating influence in the region. And this fits part and parcel with the Greater Israel Plan. The idea is to expand and accumulate as much territory as possible. I mean, this is how colonialism operates. They want to take vast territory. They want to control Syria. This is why they're occupying Syria at the moment. This is why they're using the Druze. They're using the conflicts that have arisen after the overthrow of Assad inside Syria in order to be able to kind of divide and conquer Syria, in order to probably balkanize Syria or take control of the vast territories of Syria, again, fitting within the Greater Israel Plan. And now they're trying to do the same thing in Cyprus. And they're also trying to do the same thing in Lebanon by creating intersections or kind of fueling the intersectionalist tensions within Lebanon in order to basically justify and provide pretext to constantly sort of militarily intervene and occupy Lebanon, which they are occupying 5 key territories inside of Lebanon, and they are refusing to leave. Cyprus is now the next point of contestation, and it's going to be the Cypriot public that is going to suffer the cost, because Turkey is a strong military. This is a fact. And even though Israel itself is backed by the United States, etc., if there's going to be any sort of tension that's going to be created between Israel and Turkey and using the Cypriot people as bait, essentially, this is going to completely destroy the island. And it's going to bring about, again, the tensions within the Cypriot population. And any sort of attempt to liberate the island from the north without any resolution between the two communities and the unfortunate bloody history that has taken place is going to merely generate more tensions within the public that will then justify further imperialist intervention on the island, therefore forever depleting any opportunity for this place to unify peacefully, but also to be a sovereign independent state, which is why Cypriots should be very alarmed about what's happening. But the vast majority of them, I don't think know, especially from a certain generation upwards that may not be, are relying on Cypriot media to relay this information to them. They are not aware of the extent of the dangers in their country.
I've seen reports, and by the way, you're quite right to point out that the size of Turkey's army is formidable. It's the second largest army in NATO by a significant margin over every other European country. I've seen reports of a considerable military buildup by the Turkish forces in the north of Cyprus, in the occupied part of Cyprus. Are those reports accurate, and do we know the extent of that buildup?
I mean, I believe those reports are rather accurate because, as I said, I haven't seen any other way to verify it. This is information as well that I've seen come out of the north, in media outlets out of the north. The Cypriot media has touched on it, so therefore I believe that this is currently happening. But this is part and parcel of response to the current tensions that are happening now between Israel and Turkey, and because of Israel's, as I've said, they're constantly trying to integrate Cyprus into this Greater Israel project. But to do so, you do need to expel Turkey. Turkey, however, itself has its own agenda in Cyprus. I mean, the entire reason that they have occupied the north of Cyprus is because it was part and parcel of a plan that was laid out by President Johnson from the United States in 1964. This was really, and this was a part of the idea of appeasing both Greece and Turkey at the time, which were NATO states, in order to secure the eastern frontier from the USSR. So the idea was to give the north part of Cyprus to Turkey because it's essential for its own surveillance and military security. This is why the northern part of Cyprus is so significant to Turkey as well. And they're not about to just simply allow Israel to infiltrate into the south and try to so-called liberate or cause any tensions that will threaten their own security interests in the region, which I said, it's not just happening in Cyprus. We've also seen these tensions between Turkey and Israel also take part, happening in Syria as well. And it's also going to begin happening in Lebanon because Turkey also has a vested interest for its own military, its own economic sort of ambitions within Lebanon to have significant control over the north of Lebanon, which again is something that does not appease Israel. But at the same time, I don't even think it appeases the United States in many ways because Turkey is a very big country. It has a powerful military. It is an important it's become one of the most, if not the most powerful sort of player in West Asia. And this threatens Israel, but it also threatens the United States, who wants to be the dominant party within the region for economic purposes, for, in order to be able to control resources and trade routes, etc. And having a Turkey that is at this point becoming far too powerful impedes on the interests as well of Western states. So what we're going to see, I believe, in Cyprus is that we're going to see Israel try to antagonize Turkey through Cyprus, as we're seeing in Syria as well.
The proof of state involvement came shortly after, when an Israeli newspaper, in classic fashion, published an article warning of security threats from Cyprus. The piece, written by Zionist commentator Shay Gal, outlined something far more sinister. A plan called Poseidon's Wrath, which described how Israel could dominate the Mediterranean using military and naval power. Gal wrote that Israel must be prepared to control regional sea lanes and strike preemptively under the guise of self-defense, invoking Turkey's nuclear projects as justification. The language was clear. It wasn't analysis. It was a threat. A message to Cyprus and the wider region that Israel views them as obstacles, not partners, pawns in its maritime ambitions. This wasn't diplomacy. It was imperialism dressed as strategy, another blueprint for domination hiding behind security rhetoric. Cyprus sits at the heart of a geopolitical storm. Its location makes it vital for energy transit, for trade routes, for control over the eastern Mediterranean. Israel wants that control, and projects like the EastMed pipeline and the Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum reveal its plan to dominate regional energy flow, to deliver gas to Europe on its terms, and to exclude anyone who stands in its way, particularly Turkey and the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. This is why Cyprus matters to Israel, not as a friend, but as a piece of territory in its vision of regional hegemony. It's about pipelines, profit and power disguised as cooperation. Meanwhile, the Greek Cypriot leadership, weak and deeply compromised, has played straight into Israel's hands, plagued by socio-economic instability, political dependency, and blind admiration for Western powers. President Nikos Christodoulides has turned Cyprus into the weakest link in the Eastern Mediterranean. The alliance with Israel and the United States, founded on hostility toward Turks and built on the logic of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, has created a fragile, unholy pact that now threatens to consume the island. The youth of Cyprus see this betrayal clearly, and their revolt is not just about land or ships. It's about reclaiming their dignity from foreign manipulation and refusing to let their island become another pawn in Israel's endless game of colonization. Thank you for watching. I truly appreciate your time and courage to seek the truth. Keep your support strong by subscribing to the channel and sharing this message far and wide. That's how we keep honest journalism alive. That's how we resist suppression. Until next time, may justice prevail and may peace return to those who fight for it. God bless you.